Hello. Hey, good afternoon, and hello everyone. Thank you for coming. So our presentation today is about wearables and mobiles, and why we worry about security when we have these two talking to each other. So we'll be speaking about the most commonly used communication protocols for wearable and IoT devices. That's Bluetooth and BLE. We'll be going over the spec a little bit, talk about what the base security aspects are in the Bluetooth and BLE spec descriptions, and more specifically, why this base security offered by the spec is necessary but not sufficient if you want to protect user data. Before we jump onto that, a quick round of introductions. So I'm the manager and tech lead for the wearables division at Intel, also known as the New Devices Group. I've been in the security industry for about 10, 12 years now, worked for Sun Microsystems and Palm before my stint at Intel today. And I've got with me my colleagues.
Hi, I'm Chandra, and I'm a senior software engineer working in a New Devices Group security team. And before joining Intel, I was part of Motorola Mobility as a senior software engineer.
Aloha, everyone. So I'm Kavya, working as a security engineer with the New Devices Group at Intel. And before my current job, I was working with the security teams at Oracle and Qualcomm. Before we move on to the technical details of the talk, let's take a look at what made us choose the topic of BLE security. Why is IoT such a huge craze these days? Why is it such a hot topic among everybody? If you haven't already noticed, internet-connected sensors and applications have almost taken over every aspect of our human lives. Be it you have self-driving cars, applications that are monitoring consumer retail habits or smart home ecosystems, and literally everything is connected. And with such huge cases, low power consumption and low cost become a primary factor in the operation of these devices. And needless to say, with such large amounts of data flowing back and forth, there's a lot of attack surface and a lot of concerns among users. And security is on top of the list. To name a few of the IoT-related hacks that happened over the past year, the Linux power rifle hack that was demonstrated by Runa Sandvik, and the baby monitor hack, and also the wireless car hack that was demonstrated by Chris and Charlie Miller, again, Black Hat last year. So let's take a look at the differences between Bluetooth Classic and BLE. Unlike the common misconception, Bluetooth is not a piece of plastic used to answer phone calls on your mobile device. It's a wireless communication technology or a wireless technology standard that was designed to exchange data over short ranges of distances. And BLE, on the other hand, was designed with a focus on low power consumption, and it came out as a part of Bluetooth version 4.0. And if you look at the peak current consumption section over here, it's really evident that BLE is ideal for devices running on coin cell batteries or your lightweight devices such as wearables or smart pay systems, etc. And your typical use cases for Bluetooth Classic would be wireless speakers, headsets, etc. And Bluetooth 5 is coming out soon with increased range and speeds, 4x and 2x, namely. So when we look at the Bluetooth protocol stack, there are 5 main components of interest here. The GAP, or genetic access profile, which is responsible to discover devices and also see how they connect to each other. And the generic attribute profile, which describes the characteristics or the services that are available on each of the devices. So what are characteristics? Any data that is exchanged between two Bluetooth devices is described as a characteristic. So if your temperature data or any sensor data is flowing back and forth, it is identified by the use of characteristics. SMP, which is responsible for any secure communication happening, any key exchange, key storage, and so on. The attribute profile, which defines the rules to access data among your peer devices. And the L2 cap is the layer responsible to actually multiplexing data among these physical channels. And in order to understand how BLE works over the air, there are 2 important concepts that one needs to understand. The concept of advertising and also the concept of connection interval. So let's take an example. We have a wearable device here, which is also known as the broadcaster. And it has some data of interest that it would like to share with peer BLE devices. And we have an observer here, say your mobile phone, which is interested in receiving the data that is transmitted by the observer. And the way the broadcaster sends out that this data is available is using an advertising packet, which is transmitted at frequent intervals, known as your advertising interval. And the observer scans over a preset range of frequencies, and once it realizes that there is data available that is of interest, it sends out a connection request back to the broadcaster. And once the broadcaster accepts the connection, they assume the role of GAT server and GAT client. Again, GAT being the module we saw in the previous slide. So typically, your device that contains data is a server, and the device that would like to access the data is client. And once the connection establishes, it's really important to understand that the data flow does not happen at a continuous pace. Rather, it happens at regular intervals known as connection interval. This is necessary to achieve the concept of low power consumption we spoke earlier. And before moving on to BLE security, let's take a look at the pairing algorithms used, because these are important to decide the security of the communication channel between two BLE devices. So depending on the I/O capabilities of either of the devices, you can configure the type of algorithm that needs to be used. So in the case of JustWorks, either of the devices would not have an input-output capability, or they would not have a display of any sort. So as the name suggests, the connection between two devices just happens, and there is no user interaction required. And when it comes to numeric comparison, one of the devices has a display and also a yes or no button. So the user can look at the numeric value displayed on the available interface, and once he sees that the numeric value matches on both the devices, he can click yes to confirm the connection. And since in JustWorks there's no means of authenticating or confirming the device you're connecting to, it is susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks. And passkey entry is where either of your device has a input-output capability, like a keyboard or a display or a touch screen, etc. And it also has a display to look at the numeric value. So you would actually go ahead and enter the PIN. And out-of-band is when you would use an out-of-band channel to exchange data, say NFC, and then use BLE for any further communication. So the last three are not vulnerable from man-in-the-middle attacks, but as we'll see in the later slides, there might be a problem when JustWorks is used. So, and let's take a look at what are the keys used to communicate securely between two BLE devices. And like we saw earlier, that's a peripheral, and that's your client. So the first step before devices start to exchange data securely is sending out a pairing request, which includes the capabilities that are supported and also the list of keys that they would like to use in the further communication. So the pairing request is sent out, and the peripheral, if it supports all the capabilities and if it agrees to all the requirements imposed in the request, it sends out a response back, and that is the first key of interest, the TK or temporary key. So the TK is dependent on the kind of pairing algorithm used that we saw in the previous slide. And so in the case of JustWorks, the value of TK would be 0. And when we use numeric comparison or passkey entry, the value of TK is the PIN itself. And in the case of out-of-band communication, the value of TK would be the data that is exchanged using the out-of-band channel. And TK, along with a random number from slave or peripheral and a random number from master, is used to derive our second key of interest, also known as the short-term key or STK. So STK is used to encrypt the channel temporarily, and in order to exchange the next set of keys that are used for any communication later on. So let's see what are the keys exchanged here. LTK, IRK, and CSRK. LTK, also known as the long-term key, is used to encrypt the channel for any further communication once the devices try to reconnect after this initial pairing. So LTK is really important if you do not have to go through all this pairing process all over again the next time devices go out of range and come back and connect to each other. And IRK comes into picture when you want to enable privacy on your BLE devices. So BLE supports the use of random addresses. So, but the problem there is if you use random addresses at random intervals, you still need to be connectable, or you still need to be identified by devices you already trust. That is where IRK, or identity resolving key, comes into picture. So by the help of it, you can still use random addresses and still be able to connect to trusted devices. And the CSRK is connection signature resolving key, which is used when two devices would like to communicate over an unencrypted channel, but would still like to authenticate the sender of the message. You can use CSRK to achieve the same. So like we saw, LTK is used for any further communication here. And to name a few algorithms that are supported as of today, ECDH for key exchange, and AES for encryption. So to take a look at the support available for developers looking to use BLE capabilities in their applications, Code Bluetooth is available on iOS, and it's basically an encapsulation of the Bluetooth stack we saw earlier. And the objects are available for discovering, managing, or connecting any peripheral centrals, etc. And like you can see, characteristic is to describe the data that is exchanged between both the devices. And for Android, the support was introduced as part of version 4.3. And for anybody willing to enable Bluetooth capabilities in their applications, you need to define the Bluetooth and Bluetooth admin permissions in their manifest, which is necessary to perform any communication or identify and manipulate any Bluetooth settings. And when it comes to already existing or known security risks, I would like to point out that the security of the communication channel really depends on the type of algorithm you decide to use. So if you decide to go for just words, you are susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks. And also, if you have already seen Micron's research, it does state that if an eavesdropper manages your traffic during the pairing mechanism itself, even though you decide to use encryption thereafter, it is still vulnerable. So I'd like to hand over it to Sumanth.
All right, thank you. And on to the fun world of wearables. So generally speaking, if you are looking at a wearable today, and for the purpose of this presentation, let's look at activity trackers, fitness monitors, and such. So usually when you buy a wearable, it comes associated with a companion application on a smartphone. So this could be an app on your Android or iOS phone that you install, then you start provisioning your wearable and start using it. Right, so again, generally speaking, the wearable interacts with the phone over BLE or classic Bluetooth. The wearable can also connect to other external peripherals. So this could be like a chest strap to measure your heart rate, an external pedometer to count the number of steps you've taken. Again, Bluetooth, low energy, and plus, very common protocols used for communicating with the peripherals. There are a few that still work on Bluetooth, not so many of those in the market today. The companion application on your phone also acts as a conduit for your wearable to talk to the backend cloud. So the backend cloud is a much richer environment, a whole set of APIs that can be used for the user to push his data to the cloud, maintain his activity information for forever, or also perform some other rich actions such as generating dashboards, doing some sort of analysis on your data, what have you. And of course, as good security citizens, we do hope that all these phone applications use secure protocols to talk to the backend. And of course, there are classes of wearables that also directly connect to the cloud without having to channel through the companion application. Smartwatches, for instance. And before I dive into the weaknesses, so I'll be focusing exclusively on the highlighted area here. That's the communication between the wearable and the companion application. All right, so if you look at what transpires between the wearable device itself and the companion app, so there's actually a whole lot of information that goes back and forth. But primarily, the traffic that goes from the phone app to the wearable is of two kinds. So one of them is device and settings related commands. You get a new firmware update for your activity tracker. It gets pushed to the phone. The phone application then pushes it to the device, right? But before you do that, the phone app needs to put the device into a receiving mode. And generally, this is something like a boot mode or a recovery partition, what have you. So there's a command to do that. In addition to that, maybe you just don't like the name of the device that it is broadcasting. So there may be commands to change the broadcast name of your wearable. And in addition to that, there are also notifications, right? So some of our wearables today can give a feedback to you in the form of haptic. Like it can vibrate, or if it has LED, it can blink the LED of a particular color depending on whether you're getting a call, whether you're getting a text, or a Facebook update. So all these notifications are also sent from the companion app to your wearable device. And in the other direction, there's a wealth of data in your activity tracker. There is information on whether you've been running, you're cycling, swimming, what have you, and as well as your biometric data. So there is your heart rate information, there is the number of calories that you have burned, skin temperature, all sorts of sensors on the wearables today, right? And of course, there are new functionalities and use cases where you can use some of these devices to control applications running on your phone. So you can answer a call, reject a call, skip a track on the music application playing on your phone. And also there are some weird worrying cases. This is actually true, where you get a notification on your wearable, but you bounce it back to the companion phone. Okay? So we're getting closer. So when the wearable device talks to the companion application, so a few slides ago, my colleague actually described how the BLE security works, how the various keys are generated, and what keys you use to do what security operation. But if you're a network attacker and you're listening to all the traffic going back and forth, you use something like Ubertooth, for instance. It's one of our favorite tools. You just get the dump, plug it into Wireshark, and analyze it. It's all encrypted. It's all encrypted using the long-term key, regardless of the pairing mechanism that you choose. So this attacker essentially cannot get access to any of the user personal data that is going from the device to the app, or they're not able to inject new packets or commands to affect the wearable device itself. So far, so good. But here lies the problem. So the way the BLE encryption works today, especially in the smartphone platforms that are really popular, like iOS and Android, is that this whole encryption is acting at the granularity of the phone and not the app. So this means if you have an application on the same phone where your companion app resides, and that application is using the same BLE stack and the services, it can act as an insider. Okay? Which means the network attacker is still not able to see anything, everything is still fine, but this particular malware application on the phone is able to now receive the data unencrypted from the wearable, as well as use the same format as the legitimate app to send commands to the device. That's really the punchline that we have. So on Android and iOS today, you can subscribe to the same services and use the same SDK to get access to the data using the BLE characteristics as the legitimate app. And on Android, this is fairly simple. So all you need to do, declare those permissions on the screen out there. And if you look at the developer documentation today, that's the screenshot where it says the Bluetooth admin permission is required to be able to discover and connect to the devices. And the other abilities granted by this permission should not be used. Good luck having a malware application obey that. And on iOS, there are these simple, really well-documented classes out there that you can use, lots of examples, how to write an application using Bluetooth. Let's take a look at a few examples. So in our first example, we have analyzed a class of wearable products commonly associated with fitness. And these wearable devices use just BLE, not classic Bluetooth, to connect to the companion phone application. It's not public. The source code is not available. It's proprietary. But there's a lot of information out there already, which really helped us in our research. They talk about what these messages look like, what are the headers, where the data begins, where it ends, and so on. We wrote a really simple malware application. So remember all the GAT description that Kavya just mentioned? So all we did was write an application that was scanning for GAT characteristics, do a read-write on those, just dump them, and start analyzing what the dump is. I'll show you a quick demo. All right. So in this case, we have the legitimate app running in the background. We did not show it here on the screen. The window on the right is our malware application. We connect to the device. So at this point, the legitimate app is connected to the fitness tracker as well. So as you can see on the screen now, so the screen on the left is the logcat for the malware application. So it's just we are collecting logs in Android and dumping them on the screen. And we are generating traffic using the wearable. We're just spinning it in the hand. It's thinking that we are running. And the data that you see there, oops, it went ahead. But there are two lines that you can observe that's repeating over and over again. So the first line really is the hex dump. It's just a dump that we are getting directly from the wearable device when we are scanning and reading those GAT characteristics. And after a bit, like we just stared at it for a few minutes, and then we realized that the actual step counts, the heart rate, the calories are actually there in hex, in that log messages. So we wrote a really simple parser. It's like 5 minutes of work to understand what each of these values mean, and it turned out that it's actually the steps and the calories and the heart rate. And to show that it's actually happening in real time, now we are having both the applications run in parallel. We are spinning the wearable, and then you can see that this just keep scrolling, and both the applications are getting your biometric data. All right. The second class of wearables that we analyzed were more complex. So in addition to Bluetooth and BLE, they also had Wi-Fi capabilities, much richer network stack. So this actually eliminates a bunch of threats that we're talking about. So anything that is associated with the app being the channel to connect to the cloud, well, this actually protects a few. So our exact same malware application that we ran to scan for the GAT characteristics actually did not pick up anything. The third one was a bit more fun. So this was a different wearable device. As usual, we ran our malware application, but, well, we didn't see anything. We looked at the legitimate app a little more, tried to understand what was going on in it, and it turned out that they actually had thought about security a little more. So as part of the connection plus initial setup, they were doing authentication, so which means that the legitimate app had some sort of an authentication mechanism to talk to the device before it started sending data or receiving data from the wearable. Well, it just took us more time. So what we did was we looked at the legitimate app, tried to understand how it works, rewrote our malware application to mimic what the legitimate app was doing, but we just stripped away the authentication and the handshake parts of it. We then waited for the legitimate app to connect to the device, establish an active session, then fired up the malware application, and then started sending packets. And guess what? I'll show you a quick demo for that. So in this case, we connect the legitimate app first. We scan for the device. We connect to it. The screen on the left is the logs coming from the Minicom. It's the serial logs that you see. So, oops. So in this case, so the device is connected to the companion applications, the legitimate app. We look at some of the capabilities that the app has. One of them is to reboot. So we issue a command to reboot the wearable, and we wait to see that the device reboots. So far, so good. And now we fire up the malware application. So at this point, we're also in parallel waiting for the real application to connect. And once that is set up, we issue the exact same reboot command. And the wearable reboots. Right, that's it for the demo. All right, so why is this serious? Why should we really worry about this? So we get it, right? Some of you are thinking, well, this requires a malware application on my phone. We are paranoid people by profession. That's never going to happen. True, but IoT and wearables are there everywhere today. So if you look at the Play Store or the Apple, the App Store, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of Bluetooth and BLE-based applications there, right? So IoT is the future, billions of devices, 2050, blah, blah. But having said that, so it's really hard for these application repositories to identify a malware app. So like we discussed, all they really need is Bluetooth permissions, Bluetooth and Bluetooth admin permissions. And the risk may still be low. You still need a malware app on your phone in order to be able to do this and go undetected, but the impact is high, right? So the wearables are different from smartphones. So they're actually on your body. They get access to a whole lot of personal information. There are numerous anecdotes and news articles that talk about how someone uploaded their fitness information and someone else said, oh, yeah, maybe you're pregnant. So stuff like that. So that's really dangerous, right? So and confidentiality-wise, many of these sensors actually have GPSs in them, which means they get access to fine-grained, minute by minute, day by day, month by month information on where you are at what time of the day. Oh, that's super scary. You don't want anyone else to get access to that information. So in addition to the confidentiality aspects, there is also the integrity, availability, and the annoyance thing, where applications like this can fool around with your wearable, change the broadcast name to something really obnoxious, something that, well, yeah, can cause problems with your CEO, for instance. Or also cause a whole lot of issues with the device, ranging from a permanent DOS, where you screw something, put the device into recovery mode, and you got to take the wearable to your service center to get it fixed. Or just change the name of the device and you just can't connect to it anymore. You got to do a reset, lose your data and stuff. In addition to this, well, if you're a hot young startup trying to make a dent in the wearable market, there's something that you need to worry about. Like one bad incident that talks about how crappy your security is, that can really hurt you. There's also a board risk here where it's really easy. There's nothing to do with your personal device itself. It's really easy to spin up an Android app and throw it out there somewhere, and this can cause a mass infection of devices everywhere. So what do we suggest you do about it? Off to Chandra.
Thank you, Sumanth. So before we jump on to the mitigations that we're going to propose, so I would like to clarify a few of the objectives and non-objectives and the assumptions that we made before proposing these designs. So the objectives here is preventing any malware application from sending commands like reboot and a factory reset, all those commands to a wearable device without a proper authentication. And the other objective here is the confidential information that the device is capable of generating, like activity data or GPS data or any other data. So we want to prevent that information from a malware application that's running on the, say, a phone where the legit application is also running. And few assumptions here are, we assume that a standard BLE pairing has already happened, and also the out-of-the-box experience happens with the legit application. And the non-objectives here are like, we a rooted phone or the jailbroken phones are out of scope since there is no way that you can protect anything when there is a root access on a phone. And also any other vulnerabilities that can break into the operating system sandbox model. So the other assumption, non-objective here is the rogue application or malware application that's trying to attempt to pairing to the wearable once the legit application is already paired. And also, we won't be dealing with any of the man-in-the-middle attacks since it's not what we want to cover in this talk. And so here's an overview of the mitigation that we are proposing here. So as you know that there is a BLE stack on the phone and a BLE stack on the wearable device where the pairing between them happens. And then now there is one communication channel between the wearable as well as the apps that's running on the phone. And you can see here the legit application as well as the rogue application on the phone use the same communication channel to talk to the wearable device. And how do we protect this one? Like, how do we want to have just the legit application that can talk to the wearable device, not the rogue application? So we say like we propose one more level of pairing from the application to the wearable so that the legit application negotiates a separate key other than what the keys that Kavya had mentioned earlier. It is a key that is local to the application, and then using that key, the wearable as well as the application use it for the secure communication. And there are a few considerations depending on how the wearable can be, BLE can be configured on a wearable device so that your wearable is capable of talking to multiple phones at the same time, or just one phone, or multiple phones talking to a wearables, one wearable. So all these considerations helped us to arrive at this design. And this is the simplest design that we will be looking at, since here the legit application on the phone generates a random key, which can be any number or any random number, and then which is exchanged to the wearable device. So this is happening after the BLE pairing has already happened, and then the legit application is talking to the wearable device for the first time. And now both wearable as well as the application have the same key, and then they use that key for the secure communication or to authenticate any commands that the application is sending to the wearable. So how do, this is a one-to-one design, and now the extensions of these designs could be let's say if you have if you are a user using multiple phones and if you have one wearable device, but if you want to use the same key across multiple applications for the secure communication because you already established app-to-device pairing, now here when you log into the application, here in case if you don't have any user password available or anything, your application can request any PIN user to set up their own PIN as part of the authentication, and then they use a standard key exchange mechanism, any key exchange mechanism here to exchange the keys between the wearable. And now both application as well as the wearable has the same key, then they can begin the secure communication with each other. So now let's say, now if you want to use the same key that has been exchanged for the first time across the other application running on a different phone, but for the same, under the same user account. So now in this case, because since whenever there is a user account available, so there is a backend that's connected to your application, so we upload the key, and now the user on phone 2 logs into the same application and then enters the same PIN, because since the PIN number was already selected by a user, so user has to enter the same PIN, so which will be authenticated with the client, with the backend, and then the backend would provide you the same key, which can be used to the secure communication, so that you don't need to perform any key exchange again on the phone 2. So now the design the next design is like, in case if you do, as you can saw in the previous design, you are uploading the key in the plain text, but you want to secure that key as well. Now, when the user logs in and then connects to the wearable and exchanges the key, and now instead of uploading it key in the plain text, you can encrypt the key and upload the encrypted blob to the backend, so that its user is in complete control of the key as well as the key to decrypt the encrypted blob. So now the user logs onto the application on phone 2, and he uses his same account and then authenticates with the cloud, and then the cloud provides the encrypted blob, which will be decrypted on the application, and then the key can be used for the secure communication. So this is a universal solution. The reason why we call it a universal solution is like, if an operating systems where the application would run provides a solution that similar to what we propose, like application to device pairing in a BLE service layer that they provide for the application developers, then we do not need to have any other design, since it's a one solution that can be fixed across any number of applications that's running on the phone. And as you know, the BLE devices can go out of range at any time and come back and connect to the host application. So there are these are the three corner cases that always comes into play whenever you have a key that needs to be managed on the application side. So there is a chances of that the key might be lost on either of one of the party. So when the Bluetooth, when the wearable device goes out of the Bluetooth range and comes back in, there is a chances that the device can be reset by the user or anything might have happened. And now when it comes back into the Bluetooth range, the user can pair, now there is no key on the wearable device. So, and also he has to go through the standard pairing process, but at that time the application doesn't exchange any key, since it's already exchanged the key, and now the user is pairing using a different way, like going to the settings application, setting Bluetooth, and then he's pairing from a different way. At that time there is a key mismatch that happens. And how do we deal with this? And also there is a possibility that the phone application can be uninstalled or reinstalled, or the phone can be factory reset, and the keys will be lost. And also the rogue application on the phone can attempt to pair it to the wearable device after the legit application has been paired. So how do we deal with these corner cases? The simple solution that we came up with this was to propose a challenge response mechanism whenever the key exchange happens, so that whenever the device goes out of range or comes back in range, or any time before the communication begins, when there is a disconnect between the phone and the wearable happens, so the challenge response mechanism would fail due to the key mismatch. And in that case, it's up to the application developers to show appropriate error messages to user to take an appropriate action to wipe the wearable device, or any action that a user can take. And let's say if the challenge response mechanism is successful, so that's when the secure communication can begin. So the data that's coming from the wearable can be encrypted using any one of the available algorithms like AES. It's completely wearable dependent. And also the rogue commands, or the commands that the application is capable of sending, can be HMAC, so that the device has a key that can only authenticate and then perform execute those commands upon the receival of the command from any malware or the legit application. And let's see a demo. So the demo I'll be showing is from the design flow 1, where the key exchange happens, and then how the encrypted information cannot be seen by the malware application. So here we have two applications. One is a legit application, we call, and the other one is a malware application. And when the So now this is our legit application, we call. And as you can see, the device is not connected, and now it's pairing, because this is the out-of-the-box experience. And you can see the device is connected. So here, the class of wearable that we are discussing for the purpose of demo is the notifications is, whatever the notification that the phone receives is sent to the wearable, and then the wearable replace back the same notifications to the application. So here you can see there is a notification that's a Facebook Messenger notification that's coming from the wearable to the legit application. And you can see the notification message is being shown in the mini console window inside the legit application. So now let's launch the malware application. And as you can see, the connected status of the malware application is already connected to the wearable, because since the pairing, it's using the same BLE communication channel. And now, because since the legit application has already exchanged a key that as part of the design flow 1 that I discussed, so now whatever the communication that's coming in both the legit and the rogue application has access. And let's see how the malware application sees the information that's coming from the wearable. And as you can see that since here there is a notification that's coming from the wearable, and the malware application is able to show the notification, but since it's encrypted and the malware application doesn't have a key, which the legit application negotiated with the wearable, so hence it's not able to decrypt. But still, the malware application gets hold of the information, but it cannot read anything out of it. And so now let's see how this, if you see on the legit application, since the legit application has the same key that the wearable has, and the legit application is able to decrypt the message and display it in the console. So now let's go back. So the summary here is, as we discussed, that there needs to be a malware application running on a phone, and which is not a straightforward, I mean, there is no way that, I mean, it's a very, it needs a lot of work to have a malware application running on a phone with because since it's a user's control, user will be controlling the phone. And so that's the reason why we categorize this as a medium risk, but the impact of this particular vulnerability is high, since the malware application, once get onto the phone, has a whole lot of access to the sensitive information, like your GPS data, or skin temperature, or your activity data, anything, whatever the wearable is capable of generating. And the impact of this information vulnerability becomes even more severe when we start using this wearables in security and the finance spaces. Like if you're using an Apple Watch to auto unlock your MacBook, and also if you're using a payment system from your wearable. So that's one of the that's why it's called as, we categorize that as a severe impact. And this vulnerability cannot be fixed just by protecting the network traffic network attackers, since this is not something that the network attacker can do. And on top of that, there is no universal solution, as we saw in the previous few slides. So hence there is a lot of work that the OEMs as well as the app developers has to put in place in order to get this vulnerability fixed. So if an operating system has this capability of app to device pairing, then there is no need for any OEMs or developers to put in an extra effort to fix this problem. And I want to give a shout out to our colleagues Eliza and Anto who helped us to put in those slides. Put in those demo videos. And thank you, everyone. And we are open for questions.
I think we have just about a minute or two if you have any questions. Yes?
Is it possible to use the wearable to bounce to another wearable?
Well, maybe. So this is because, so like I said, some wearables can connect to external peripherals, like a chest strap or like a pedometer, but those stacks are very limited, right? So the richer stack is really between the wearable and the companion phone. And there are restrictions that, that limit how many devices that a wearable can already connect to. Sorry, the question was, can one wearable bounce information to another wearable? Yes?
So it's an excellent presentation. You guys are with their standards-based efforts in the industry?
So the question is, are there standards that can solve this problem industry-wide, right? So some of it is work in progress. Currently, because this is a combination effort, so this is something that affects OEMs, smartphone vendors, wearable markets, everything, right? So there is the consortium that needs to come together to solve this. But there is some effort going on at this point. There is no timeline for a solution, but short answer is yes. Anyone else? If not, feel free to come talk to us. We'll be around. And thanks for attending.
Thank you.